The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis gives us a pretty good snapshot of what's going on with our local economy thanks to its latest Beige Book report out this month. Economist and Assistant Vice President Chuck Gascon is here with details and also some surprises, right? Thanks for being here.
It's nice to be here.
Great to see you.
Good to be here.
All right, so how is the local economy doing, according at least to the Federal Reserve?
Overall, the reports that we're getting from businesses are showing that conditions are relatively stable over the last couple of months. 2025 ended up being a relatively slow growth year in the region, probably close to 1% growth, and it's been a relatively stable trend going through the first half of the year. So that's basically where we're at right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of shocks over the last couple of months, and we'll have to wait and see from businesses over the next couple of weeks kind of how that's playing into
Yeah,
their
we just
outlook.
did a story on gas prices,
Yep.
but they did go down a little bit today. So I saw that people are reporting to you that prices are increasingly going up, but at the same time, it looked like retail sales might be.
Yeah, retail sales looked pretty good. Yeah. So the holiday shopping season was pretty strong. I think I may have been here last time to talk to you a little bit about that, but end of December into January, activity looked really strong. And as we got into the first part of the year, we had some weather disruptions, so that definitely slowed things down. But talking to retailers around the region, they were saying their outlook for the year looked pretty good, particularly in kind of larger durable good purchases, kind of home furnishings, home renovations, that kind of stuff. And that's something we haven't seen as much lately.
Oh,
so
that's
an
interesting.
uptick, yeah.
And there was a bright spot in manufacturing, right?
Yeah, manufacturers, I mean, the year started out really tough with the tariffs being announced, manufacturers having to pull in orders early, and then manufacturing activity kind of slowed down as you got into the first half of 2025. And then it started ramping back up in the second half of the year. So we started to see some signs of maybe a little bit of onshoring activity where supply chains were moving more locally. And then again, some of those inventories ran down, and that allowed manufacturers to pick up on production again.
Oh, that's interesting. And remind people how you get all of this data for the report.
Yeah, so we have a great network of business contacts across the St. Louis region, across the 7-state region that makes up the St. Louis Fed. And what we do is on a regular basis, we go out and have one-on-one meetings with our business contacts. We run surveys, bring people into the bank to sit down and talk about what's going on within a specific industry. And we pull all that information together for our bank president before he goes to Washington, D.C. for monetary policy. And then we share it with the public through our Beige Book report.
And the region is how big, just for everyone to
So we have
know?
a 7-state region. So it's most of Missouri. The Kansas City Fed has the western portion of the state, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, Arkansas, Kentucky, and western Tennessee.
Yeah. Did anything else surprise you, or was anything else surprising for the Federal Reserve, I should say?
Yeah, so when we did the surveys, one of the things that we do every February is we ask about pricing expectations and what we think businesses are going to do with what they expect to do with their prices to charge the customers going forward. And last year, they reported that their prices increased by about 2.6%, and this year they're expecting to raise their prices a little over 3%. So there's still some ongoing price pressures there. A lot of that's coming from labor costs continuing to go up, insurance costs going up, utility costs going up, and that's compressing their profit margins, so they feel they have to pass on some of those higher costs to customers. And about 3/4 of businesses felt like they had some ability to pass on those higher costs.
Man, everything's going up. I mean, when is something going down? That's what I would like to know. Can you give us a glimpse into what is happening with unemployment? Because it seems like young people might be struggling with finding a job, landing a job.
Yeah, so over the last year, the labor market has definitely cooled. You've seen job growth get close to zero. In the St. Louis area, the data that we have right now actually shows a contraction in overall employment last year. So labor demand's really cool. Businesses are telling us that they're not planning on hiring more workers coming into this year. They're kind of happy with their employment levels. And those first-level workers, entry-level workers coming into the labor market, they tend to get hit first. So you see a lot of younger workers struggling to find jobs. Overall, the unemployment rate in the region is still at 4%, which is below the national average. It is up a little bit from last year. So that's good, and it's a good sign that we have a healthy labor market. And population growth has been relatively slow. So it's not like we have to add a ton of jobs in the region to keep up with the labor force growth. But you definitely want to see some steady job growth in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so overall, this is just data, but how do you think it shakes out? Is it optimistic, or is it just a continued sign of uncertainty? I mean, we do have those things like the war to talk about, right?
So when we did our survey in the middle of February, and even the more recent reports we got, businesses were generally optimistic coming into this year. They felt like they weathered a lot of the challenges they had last year. Businesses that were looking to make investments were starting to pick up on those investments again. So it did look like we're starting the year out with pretty solid fundamentals for growth. Something we haven't talked about today that everyone's talking about is AI, right?
Yeah.
And data center investment and productivity gains. And that's something that continues to come up in our surveys from businesses saying, like, we're finding ways to be more productive that can generate more incomes, ultimately generate more spending, but it doesn't necessarily always translate into, a lot of demand for labor.
Yeah, and that's what we were just talking about. Festus is a big one, and St. Louis, they're having a meeting today. So thank you so much for
Absolutely.
your insight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.